Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today at this Climber hosted webinar on Qlik Cloud migration. My name is James Sharp. I'm the Managing Director here at Climber UK. And over the next 40 minutes or so, we're going to explore how to migrate to Qlik Cloud and some of the recent changes from Qlik, particularly around the licensing models and considerations for that. So with me today, I've got Roger and Magnus, who'll be both presenting. So if you could move forward, Roger, to the next slide, that'd be great. For those of you that don't know who Climber are, just a very quick overview. So we were founded in 2007 in Sweden, now have offices across 5 countries, main ones being UK, Finland, Sweden and Netherlands. We got small offices in Denmark. We have something called the Climber Academy, where we provide Qlik training. So you can do free online training every quarter to get you up to speed with Qlik and your end users up to speed with Qlik, all the way to the advanced back-end training. There's some stats there you can see for yourselves in terms of the number of solutions we deliver each year. There's the number of dedicated consultants we have. And we also provide services around support functions and host environments for people that require that. Next slide, please, Rog. So some of the services we provide, so strategic advisory, so that would be things like we're covering today, some advice and direction on how to deliver certain projects, whether that is a Qlik Cloud migration, whether it's really a wider project that you want to look at in terms of a modern data landscape, and how we can advise you on making product choices and making decisions on how you move forward. And then we'd move into solution development. So that may be traditionally building dashboards, but of course now we're in the world of AI. So now it's looking at much more around data science, machine learning capabilities, things along those lines. User training already touched on in our Climber Academy, and we can equally do bespoke online training for yourselves and your colleagues. And then the infrastructure services, again, the ability for Climber to host certain services for you if there's a need, particularly again where people may have legacy systems and they want to move to a full cloud operation but they can't in the time that suits. So a number of times we are hosting those environments for those people. And what comes along with that is our dedicated support team as well. So we have a team called Expert Services based in Sweden, and they would support our customers from all sorts of different things, but particularly on the infrastructure and architecture. So the agenda today, we're going to cover the Qlik Cloud platform, so what's included in that, the recent pricing model, as I mentioned a second ago, the move to capacity-based pricing, and so what does that mean and what considerations should people be taking in potentially making the switch to capacity-based licensing. And then getting to Qlik Cloud. So if you're currently QlikView, QlikSense on-prem, how can you make that switch to Qlik Cloud? And also, if you're already on Qlik Cloud, maybe you want to look at the capacity-based licensing, because with that does bring some additional benefits as well. And then at the end, we'll have a conclusion. So we'll have a bit of a wrap-up in terms of what we've learned, and of course, lead into a Q&A. But if you do have any questions throughout this session, please do use the Q&A panel at the top right-hand side of your screens, or the chat panel, and we'll be keeping an eye on those and try and answer those as we go through the session. Next slide, please, Rog. So as I mentioned, we've got Roger and Magnus. So Roger is a BI manager from the UK team, and Magnus, BI manager from the Swedish team. So with no further ado, Magnus, I think I'm handing over to you.
All right, thank you, James. Right, like James mentioned, I'm a BI manager from Sweden. Then I've been with Climber for about 10 years now, so I've been a while, and even longer than that in the analytics sphere. So I'm going to take you through a little bit on the Qlik Cloud platform, and also what the new capacity model looks like when it comes to licensing, because it is quite a departure from the user-based licensing that most of you are probably used to. All right, so what is Qlik Cloud then? A lot of you are familiar, of course, with QlikSense and QlikView, which I assume most of you are using today. And but Qlik has expanded quite rapidly into quite other areas as well. So they have a huge, but at least a data platform. So to the right here, you have analytics and AI and ML stuff. That's the Qlik Sense that you all know and love, and the Qlik engine that you all have been using. But it also has lots of other capabilities that Roger will go into later. But there's automations, there's alerts, there's Qlik Answer, etc., etc. So lots of other things besides just the analytics and on the right-hand side. But we also have the data integration and quality side. So Qlik also has products to be able to move data in real time with the change data capture, but also in batch loading to load and transform this data into various data platforms. So that's one of the key elements to the Qlik Cloud, is that it's sort of independent of any of the cloud vendors. So you can go and put your data in AWS, in Google, in Microsoft, and you can use Iceberg, Snowflake, Databricks. It doesn't really matter. Qlik and connect to all of those. And what you get basically when you sign up is that you get one or more tenants, and that is sort of where all this functionality is residing. And then you can also, of course, connect to other databases and other places as well. All right, so that's a very brief overview of what Qlik Cloud is. So it's much more than analytics. And like I said, Roger will go into some more details why specifically the analytics side is interesting, but we'll also touch a little bit on the data integration side because it has some impact in the new capacity model. Okay, security and trust, that's always a big issue when it comes to moving things to the cloud. Suffice it to say, Qlik has all the necessary certifications that you would expect from this. So it's usually not an issue. We have banks, public organizations, and high-level security organizations running in Qlik Cloud. So it's usually not a concern. The tenants that you run, you pick your region where you want to run them yourself. And under the hood, the Qlik Cloud is running on AWS. So there are regions in the UK, Ireland, Frankfurt, etc. Sweden, there are some other regions as well. So shouldn't be any issues there, but if you have any specific concerns, you are more than welcome to contact us. And everything is, of course, encrypted. And also, if you want to keep control of your encryption keys yourself, you can also do that. So there's lots of security measures that can make sure that your data is handled correctly. All right, so let's go into the Qlik Cloud Analytics price model, what it is and how it's measured. So the main distinction here is that Qlik has moved to a capacity-based pricing instead of a user-based pricing that most of you probably are on. So and this is not, some of you might have the capacity analyzer capacity-based licenses where you have minutes that you consume, but it's not like that. So this is a different concept, even though they both have capacity in their name. But we also need to make the distinction between the capacity-based pricing that Qlik is using and consumption-based pricing. So easy way to think of it is consumption-based is your electrical bill at home, right? For every device you plug into the wall, you pay more. But on a capacity-based pricing, we can compare it more to like a Google Drive or an iCloud, where you purchase a certain capacity and you can use up to that amount. So that's the main distinction between capacity and consumption-based. But let's go into a little bit more on the details of what signifies what you get with the capacity model as well. Because as James mentioned before, there are some pretty interesting benefits compared to the user-based model. So busy slide here, I know, but we'll highlight some things. So basically what you have here are 4 different levels. So a starter, standard, premium, and enterprise. Those are the different levels, and you sort of purchase your data packs. So the capacity that you're requiring, you purchase those in data packs. And as you can see here, like standard starts out at 25, premium starts out at 50, etc., and going up. If you already have a Qlik Sense instance today on-prem or a QlikView instance, and you use Qlik's very good move to cloud offers, then you will probably end up, depending on how many licenses you have today and what you're paying today, usually most of our customers end up in the premium tier, but it could be standard and enterprise as well. And so let's highlight some of the things what you're actually getting. Apart from like the analytics, of course, that we all know and love when it comes to Qlik Cloud Analytics, it also provides a lot of other things. So if we focus in a little bit on the different aspects here, you can see that there's a dashed line according to this here. So there's some aspects that are included, and then you can purchase extra capabilities. So for instance, reporting. If you want to have automated reports that you send out to your suppliers or to your customers, then reporting is included from standard and up. And for standard, it's 1,000 reports per month. Premium, it's 5,000 per month. So quite a things that were handled previously with imprinting is included in some ways here. And again, Roger will go through the differences between the two, but just to highlight what's sort of included in the package here as well. So reporting is one thing that's included, and then you can, if you wanted to go above that, for instance, above the 5,000 for the premium, then you can purchase additional levels. If we're looking below the line, then you can see, for instance, that you have in the standard 5 gigabytes size limit for apps and 10 gigs for premium. If you wanted to move that, you can't purchase individually for those. So you would instead move up a tier to enterprise if you wanted 15 gig apps for all your apps. So there are some fixed limits and capabilities for the ones below and included above. But also some of the real benefits when we get into this, we'll go into some of the details here, but basically you can see that there are no mentions of users, and this is because from standard and up, except for the starter pack where there's a 10 user pack, but for standard and up, there's basically no limits on users. Technically it's 100,000 users, but most Qlik customers don't go above that. So you can have as many users as you want, because that's not part of the pricing model anymore. We're working on capacity and not on the users. So, and all those users, before you always had the distinction between professional and analyzer, what capabilities they had, but Qlik has also removed that. So users can be, all of them could be professional users or could do anything in the tenant if you so wanted. So that's a huge approach and opens up a lot of new use cases. Because as you can see, if you were to enter, for instance, in the premium tier there, then you would have several tenants, which you then could, for instance, set up a separate tenant for your customers, and you can invite those into the tenant, and with the number of users, that wouldn't be a problem, and you can invite and they could share the data that you want to decide to share with them and stuff like that. So lots of interesting opportunities. There's also machine learning. So in the premium tier, especially then, you get 5 deployed models. So this is a good starting version. And most of these things are with some differences, but for the AI things like machine learning and the AI assistants here, you get a good starting pack where you can sort of explore things and get to know your data and find the use cases. And then if you wanted to deploy it for the whole company or for larger use cases, then maybe you need to purchase some extra amounts, right? But the other one below the machine learning there, you have the generative AI assistants, and this is Qlik Answers, where you can actually query unstructured data that you may have, say PDFs or other documents or things like that you might have in a SharePoint or some other place. You could get those, and Roger will talk a little bit more about those, I think, as well. But that is also included. So you can get started to a pretty good level. 6,000 pages is still, it's not pages indexed. It's not exactly a PDF page, but roughly. So you can at least get started on those types of use cases and use those 1,000 questions per month to ask questions from your data as well. Wanted to highlight one more thing before we go on, or actually, one more thing. The automations, those are, I think, one of the bigger benefits of moving to Qlik Cloud, and that you actually get here. They have a distinction between third-party automations, which are ones that are connecting to other systems, and touching on those and trying to do orchestration between those, and then standard automations, which is basically just using Qlik, but Qlik and email. So you can still set up quite advanced loading chains and also notifications to users in different channels as well. So that was briefly on what they're
Can I just
included.
add,
Yeah,
Magnus,
sure.
on the premium, I think if any customers that are on or people watching that are already on Qlik Cloud, these looking carefully at the details of these different tiers is well worth considering whether you should shift from a user-based pricing to capacity-based, not least for the Qlik answers and the Qlik predict, the machine learning aspects. I think that's a real gear shift from Qlik in providing those at that tier with some sort of usable sizes. So we've seen it before where they provide some level of entry level, but almost you can't do enough with it. But this really does move into an area where you can use these products sensibly within your business. So I think, yeah, considering a shift to capacity from user-based pricing for any existing cloud customers is definitely worth looking at as well.
Yeah, very, very good point. And we had one customer that moved to from a user base to a capacity base to also get the connectors, because all the connectors are included in the from premium and up. So some of the SAP connectors are also, if you're working towards those systems, that might be interesting as well. Right. Let's see if we can move ahead here. All right. So one concern, of course, when moving to a capacity limit is overage. And overage is basically when you go over, and but the functionality keeps working, because you wouldn't want your whole Qlik Cloud Analytics to just go down and not admit any users. But if you go over the amounts limits then that are set, you will be charged for that. It's not a huge overcharge, so I don't think this is something that you have to be aware of it, of course, but you get warnings. And you will work together with us or Qlik to sort of see, okay, you're getting closer. Should we do something about this? Do you need to expand? Have you onboarded new data sources and so forth? So it is turned on overage for both the reporting automations and also for the data packs themselves as well. But let's get into actually how you calculate this capacity, because this can be a little bit tricky. So it's measured on the data for analysis volume. Well, how do you measure that? But basically, you measure the purchase capacity that you had. If we take 50 gigabyte for a typical premium setup, then that's the 50 gigabyte max for a monthly usage. And how you calculate that is that it's the total of all data loaded into and residing in Qlik Cloud. So loaded into, we'll get into some more details, but loaded into is basically your extract apps. If you have an extract application in Qlik Sense and that's loading data from Snowflake or Databricks, it's going to count that data that you're loading it into. And residing is the data that you're storing in Qlik Cloud. So basically your QVDs, other Parquet files, CSV files, whatever you have, whatever type of files you have. There are different options for moving data into Qlik Cloud, of course. You can have a direct data connection from Qlik Sense, essentially the same Qlik Sense extract apps that you had previously. For some of the on-prem data sources, if you want to access on-prem data sources, you use a data gateway, and there are two different kinds, but here you will use the direct access one, and you just use those. It works the same way as an extract app, basically. There are also, as I mentioned, there's also an option for to use the functionality that Qlik has with the Qlik Talent Cloud part, the integration side. So there's another gateway called the Data Movement to Qlik Cloud. Then you would use the Qlik Talent Data Integration Suite to actually load the data and create QVDs in Qlik Cloud. And this might be of interest because it reduces a little bit, we'll get into this, but it reduces a little bit the data loaded into Qlik Cloud measurement. And also it has a little bit different connectors, so you can do a lot of different things. There are some interesting connectors that you have there that you could use to get your data into Qlik Cloud. going into sort of the more details of it. So basically, you would look at each application and see how much data did it load per day, and you get sort of a daily peak, right? So if you load, like in this example here, you load 3 gigs on day 1, 6 gigs on day 2, 5 gigs on day 3, etc., then the 6 gigs would be the daily peak that would be translated into your monthly peak. Note that it's calculated per app, so there are some considerations how you structure this and how you set it up. We'll get into those a little bit as well. And then you add all the total files that you have as well. Notice though that they extract the sort of loading from data from external sources. It is only external sources. So if you're loading from the typical case, if you have one extract app that's loading from the source system, that's only counted once, then you may have 5 apps that loads from the QED that creates. Those loads do not count because they're loading data that's already in Qlik Cloud and it's already being measured as a QED. So it's extract apps, that's the load that's being counted towards your capacity then. Of course, there are some development considerations because of this and how you measure it, right? You are basically, since, as I mentioned, if you have a data gateway, a data movement gateway, then you install that on-premise. For instance, if you're using an on-premise data source or an SQL data source, you install that there. And in reality, that's the engine that's doing the heavy lifting of extracting the data and make it into QBD. So then it doesn't count. So we have had some customers that have switched to using that type of data movement gateway to be able to sort of keep their ingested volume in check. There's also things that we should have been doing all along, perhaps, that sometimes we as developers maybe don't do. It's keeping track of your data to build smaller applications. It's very easy to do a load star, and well, it may not be a good choice, right? So then try not to do that. Maybe only pick up the data you need. You clean up unused data and apps. You can use some of the functionality that is available on demand app generation, direct query, dynamic views to be able to get only the data that you need. That helps the users as well. You get snappier apps that will be a better user experience as well. But I'm going to hand over to Roger now. He's going to take you through some of the more details of what Qlik Cloud actually includes.
Fabulous. Thank you, Magnus. Yeah, so really this section is about moving your current environment into Qlik Cloud Analytics. It's focused very much on the analytics side. The data movement, data integration side is somewhat different because effectively you're re-engineering an awful lot of your transformation layer to work with that technology stack. And maybe we'll have future presentations on that. So this is really taking data that you've been used to in a QlikView, QlikSensor environment and then moving it into Qlik Cloud. I just want to start with this very simple but very, very powerful capability, which is Qlik has just recently embedded their online learning into Qlik Cloud. So you're now got this direct relationship between what you're seeing within Qlik Cloud and the learning and training materials that's available and has been available for many times, for many months and years. But it provides that sort of guided learning for anybody new, especially if you wanted to bring in a self-service style of capability going forward. You know, this is demonstrating how you can get to AI functionality, something that could be very new to somebody that's in Qlik Cloud and having come from an on-premise environment. So very simple, but very, very powerful for you and including experienced users. You know, so always new stuff to learn. So that's quite good. So yeah, it's really building up on what Magnus concluded with, which is sort of thinking through what are your goals? What are you trying to achieve in this migration? You know, if it's a simple lift and shift because you got this edict which basically says let's move everything to cloud because it reduces our total cost of ownership. Fine, that's a great goal. It is a very a goal that a lot of customers adopt, and nothing wrong with that. But if your goal is to also include some new capabilities into some of your analytics, where you want to make use of the reporting services, or you want to make use of the AI capabilities, certainly if you've gone to the premium capacity-based pricing, which opens all that up to you, then certainly consider the learning path of getting people trained and understanding how that learning capability will help, but getting people to really understand the differences that's needed. A lot of AI projects really fail because of poor data engineering at the front end. So it's just really understanding that data literacy aspect that changes slightly with AI to analytics, but we get people to really understand that data that literacy capability and make sure that's addressed in the plan, and then establish that plan. It's sort of go lives from any form of migration, not just Qlik Cloud, but ERP systems are not big bang affairs in general. They are generally phased approaches where pieces of the functionality is migrated across. So make sure you've got that plan in place that instigates the change, but then there's a verification that makes sure that what's been migrated has actually been migrated. And a very good point to consider is your starting point. If your starting point is a like-for-like shift of what's on premise to what's in Qlik Cloud, then fine, just have a nice, tidy, clean environment, and then migrate your extract and transform layer and validate you're getting the same results in Qlik Cloud. It's a very simple exercise. You just make sure that the numbers add up, having moved across, and that gives you a nice, solid foundation to knowing that your basic data has not changed as part of the migration. If you try and make code changes and introduce new functionality as part of that migration, that adds in confusion. So I would recommend either do a lift and shift and validate and then add in new functionality, or if you can, if it's possible with on-prem, add in that functionality on-prem and then migrate. So it just reduces the risk and reduces or simplifies the testing. So get your goals, understand what you need to achieve in the plan, and then execute. There's a bit around access control. Access control on the on-prem version of Qlik Sense is slightly different. It's attribute-based. So the security rules, very, very capable system of describing various resources that you can have, whether that's users, whether that's spaces, whether that's apps, and then you grant permissions to those resources. And you can get some very, 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 very complex rules. Very fine-grained. It's a grant or deny access. It's binary. You either grant access to the resource, or you don't have access to that resource. And it's in Qlik Cloud, it's slightly different. It's role-based. So effectively, as a user, you're granted roles. Those roles are at different levels. So you've got overall tenant type roles, like a tenant admin opposed to a content admin. So the ability to make changes within Qlik Cloud is restricted by roles at a tenant level. Then down to individual spaces. So spaces are the equivalent of streams, a bit like folders, where you can restrict access to particular users to those particular spaces. And you can, a space, one of the big differences between on-prem and cloud is a space can not just only include apps, but it can include documents, it can include QVDs, notes, all sorts of objects that are managed within a space, and then you can grant access. And you can sort of start separating some of this out. So you could have a space dedicated to data and a space that's dedicated to extraction apps. So you're separating your apps from your data, or you can combine them in the same space. So the choice is yours. So again, it's very granular. It's got the ability to change the roles, to get the relevant security that you need for your particular organization. And bridging across everything is section access. So section access fundamentally hasn't changed. So your section access that you're used to within QlikView and Qlik Sense on Qlik Sense on premise is exactly the same as it is in Qlik Cloud. One thing you need to be wary of is user identity. Your identity provider on premise may be different from what you use in Qlik Cloud, or it may be the same Qlik Cloud, but Qlik Sense on premise will tend to use a different ID field to Qlik Cloud. And so you may have a dual identity, which you may need to manage during that transition phase. So a user that's on premise may have a slightly different identity. Well, not slightly, it will be a different identity. And so you'll end up with dual identity if you're not careful. So if you've got people switching between your hybrid model between cloud and on-prem, then you need to make sure that's managed carefully certainly in terms of section access. You don't lock people out. Reporting. So there's quite a lot in capabilities in Qlik Cloud. So endprinting is not supported at all. So you just cannot connect endprinting to Qlik Cloud. So what you have within Qlik Cloud is the ability to what is called reporting services, which generates PDFs. So effectively, it's the same as downloading a sheet. If you've started to look at Qlik Cloud, you've got the ability to subscribe to a sheet. It's using that same functionality, but you can take a sheet or an individual chart off a sheet. And the other good thing about it is you can have charts and sheets from multiple apps all combined together into one report with a nice little covering email that describes what this report's all about. So you've got a very controlled way of creating a complex report based on multiple apps. Likewise, with tabular reporting, you can take sheets and objects and also create individual Excel tables, Excel charts, but it's from one app. With Pixel Perfect, again, it's from a single app, and you can create some very, very fine-grained reports that gives you a good quality of output in PDF format. And lastly, I just want to point out about some third-party tools. The one we promote a lot is Mailing Deploy. So you all should have had an invite to this session on Thursday. It's a really good session. It's going to be with one of our customers, so TT Club. It's nothing to do with the Ironman TT that's running at the moment, but a part of Thomas Miller. So it's part of the Thomas Miller Insurance that looks after logistics and transport. And they are using Mailing Deploy as part of their migration plan from moving from on-prem and endprinting into Qlik Cloud. So it's a good session. So Cav from TT will be on that, along with Nav from Climber and Emma from Mailing Deploy. So I strongly recommend everybody sign up to that. It's going to be a good presentation. Large apps. So depending on the tier you move into, this may or may not become a problem. I think as a general principle, I think Magnus is correct. As a developer, you can get lazy and just leave some redundant data in apps if you're not careful, or not design the joins to be as efficient as possible and have a lot of sort of data that's loaded into those apps that is not absolutely necessary. So do look at those apps again, whether you do it pre-migration or post-migration. It really depends on whether you can migrate that app as is. But it's certainly worth looking at some simple techniques. Timestamps is a classic, where if you just load a timestamp every millisecond, it's a new record within the table. So what you want to do is break that down into a date and an hour and a minute, and can dramatically reduce your footprint. If all else fails, ODAG is a great example. And ODAG, is pitched as being the big data solution. You don't have to go away to an external database, as that tends to suggest. If you go away to big data in Google and try and bring in a subset of the data, which is what it was primarily designed for, you can equally go away to a set of QVDs and bring back a subset of data from QVDs. So there's a way of pre-filtering the data and even pre-structuring the data to be able to change the way in which that data is loaded in your template app that follows on. So certainly ODAG, if you do have a large app, then it's worth considering. And of course, as a last resort, pay the money and get the additional large app capacity. But I would recommend to any customer to try and eliminate large apps if they can, because they tend to be sluggish to use, so not a great user experience. Qlik automations is incredibly powerful. Its ability to orchestrate a number of tasks. It's code-free, and in fact, what's showing here is an automation that Qlik puts together, which automatically installs all of the monitoring apps for you. So it goes through and you decide what space you want to put them in. So it's very configurable and you can set them up. And it will go through and set up the keys for you, the API keys to be able to access the data, decide which apps you want to install, set the schedule for you, and just take all that pain away, that administration pain. And regularly you can run this and it will check if there's a new version and go and update the apps for you with new versions. Likewise, there's another automation which will swap over API keys because it's good practice to not constantly, but regularly change your API keys to different keys for security reasons. I use it extensively for not just installing monitoring apps, but also there's a great template to make a copy of all of your apps as you promote them into a managed space. So you've got a shared space, which is where you do your code development, and a managed space is effectively your production space. And then what you can do is whenever you promote any app, it automatically takes a copy of the script, the app without any data, and a JSON representation of the UI pages. So then you've got that version control capability where you can see what's changed. So you're no longer relying on somebody remembering to type something into an update section or a change log. It's there. You can see like for like, what is the difference between that script compared to that script. So certainly where you've got multiple developers, that's very, very helpful in trying to understand if an issue arises following a promotion. Just conscious of time, so I'll just rattle through some of this. So direct data connections. So this is the standard Qlik Cloud analytics approach of getting to data. So think of it, if you're used to Qlik scripting, where you can query a SQL database, you'd use exactly the same syntax, but you're going through a different connector, which happens to go down into this data gateway, which is behind your firewall. So as far as the developer is concerned, it's the same syntax. All you're doing is just tunneling down, querying that data, and then returning the data back up to Qlik Cloud. So it's a query-based way of getting to the data. The other important thing was a new feature that came out about 2 months ago. This also gives you access to files behind your firewall as well. So at long last, Qlik Data Transfer, if anybody has got experience of that, which was a short-term solution that Qlik put into place with Qlik Cloud a couple of years ago, that can be retired now. We can get to files and also get to API data. REST API data is also supported through this. So it gives that ability to get down into that data. Data movement is that data integration style of getting to the data, so slightly different. So this is using change data capture, CDC data capture type methodologies. So what you do, you monitor log files within databases and will automatically insert new records or update records if any of that data changes. Likewise, if the data table changes, the data structure changes, it will provide updates with that change of structure. So it really does take away a lot of the coding overhead just by automating that ability to bring in data tables, not just from regular databases, but also from a set of SaaS services as well. The only thing you do need to remember is you need an AWS S3 bucket to copy this data into QEDs. So it uses that to stage the data, which then is the final QED is pushed into Qlik Cloud. So you just need to make sure you factor in getting an AWS S3 bucket, but they are relatively low cost. So migration, so cloud migration. So you've got Qlik has a migration center website, which gives you access to a migration app, which basically checks against your on-prem environment, whether there's Qlik View, Qlik Sense, connect up the Qlik Cloud, and it will see what the differences are. And there are PowerShell scripts which enable you to install new users, install new apps based on extracted CSV files. So it's a nice closed loop process of going through each of your apps that you want to migrate. So you've got the dashboards, which gives you a status of where you are at any one moment in time. So you can see how well you're progressing against the plan. So it's a great, if you've got a large number of apps to migrate, I'd strongly recommend this. If you're a very small scale solution, perhaps it's a little bit overkill. But certainly if you've got sort of 50 apps plus, well worth considering. Just been released. It was only in Qlik Connect back in the middle of May. Qlik announced the fact they've acquired a migration tool, which does a lot more than just what those CLI PowerShell scripts do. So not only do they copy up apps and copy scripts and push those up, but can modify them in flight as well. So if you've got some regular changes that need to be made to, for instance, you've got a script that makes a connection to a particular database, and that string has changed in Qlik Cloud, it's almost bound to, then you can just say, it's okay, if you see that string, change it to that string. So it automates a lot of this functionality. So it's going to make life a lot easier. All very new at the moment. We're waiting to get some more information from Qlik, and we're happy to share that in the future, I'm sure. So planning is the same before. It's very rarely a big bang. It's think through what assets you have on your current environment, tidy them up, get them as small as possible, and get a nice clean environment to start from. Then go through that sort of proving concepts just to make sure you can use the particular third-party extensions you're currently using. Your reporting capability is understood, and then how to implement those. Any alerting, any guardrails, in terms of app sizes, make sure that's understood, and you have, your plan is executable, having proven out all those different concepts. Get a resource plan together. This should not be an IT project. This is a business project. Effectively, the business users need to understand what input they need to make in terms of ensuring the data is accurate. The IT teams, if it's managed within an IT team, need to understand the security and any infrastructure changes. If you're having to install a data gateway, make sure they put that in place. So establish that overarching plan and get all players on board and really understand those dependencies. And then finally, just execute it. Just have a good, solid plan that you can go through each of those different phases and just make sure everything gets done in a nice, controlled way. So, in conclusion, make the project real. Give it a name, get it communicated, get people to really understand it across the business. What is it trying to achieve? If it's trying to improve the functionality by making use of AI, make sure the business understands that, and the various business partners need to be involved to improve that capability. Fully test, validate your data that's on premise is the same in Qlik Cloud. Is do that line for line comparison just to make sure everything is correct. Get those champions in the business. These are the real testers. These are the ones that's truly going to understand the data and make sure it's correct. So just make sure those business champions are available. And if the migration is big enough, make use of the migration tools. And the new Qlik tool coming through, the Qlik migration tool will be free to customers and to partners to be able to aid migrations. So in conclusion, I'll hand that back to James.
Thanks, Rog. That was great. I'm conscious we're slightly over time, so apologies for that. But we do have a couple of questions. First one, Magnus, I think is probably directed at you in your session or section. So can we keep our user-based pricing if we move to Qlik Cloud?
If you already have Qlik Cloud and are you user-based, or if you are user-based on-prem and want to move to Qlik Cloud, Qlik prefers you to move to capacity-based. But if there are exceptional circumstances, then yeah, get in touch with us. We'll see what we can do.
Okay, cool. And then the only other one I really have here is regarding the migration, Rod. So moving from QlikView and migrating apps from QlikView to Qlik Cloud using the migration tool, does it retain the QlikView UI? Which I assume it doesn't.
No, the UI is not. The technology with QlikView is very different to QlikSense, so unfortunately it doesn't support the UI. But in terms of the script and that, well, that's migratable. So it uses the tool that's provided by Qlik for creating. It's been around for a number of years now. The QlikView to QlikSense migration tool. So effectively make use of that. That will pull most of it out. The new migration tool will use the same tool to do that automatically as part of the migration plan.
Fantastic. I'm not sure if there's any other questions.
There was one question that I answered in writing, but it was the effect of the CDT on scale databases. Yeah, it's fairly small since it goes on the log files, so it's light in that context. So that's a good one. And when it comes to, I should make it a little bit more clear when it comes to Azure Blob, it is coming as a target when it comes to QTC to onboard data, but as of right now, I don't think it's coming as a process, and when you are creating the QBDs to have it the landing as a Azure Blob storage. But so at least as of as of right now, that's not the case. You have to have S3 bucket for that. So
cool. Okay. Well, I think that's all the questions. Just going back to what Roger mentioned about the mail and deploy demo that's happening on Thursday. It's kind of an invitation only session for people that signed up for the cloud migration webinar. I have, however, put in the chat Catherine Webster's email address, our marketing executive. So if anybody hasn't seen the invitation and would like to attend that session, please do email Kat. So it's Catherine Webster at climberbi.co.uk, and as I say, the email address is in the chat. And we look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Magnus, Roger, thanks so much for your time. It's a pleasure, and thank you everyone for attending.